Well, hello, and happy Labor Day, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your kind of hopefully more relaxed day, maybe spending some time with family. And even though I know the lighting isn't the most ideal right here, I wanted you to be able to see me sitting here on my porch enjoying the great outdoors here in northern Michigan. So today we are going to be talking about how to make your food taste great. A lot of people that I have talked to, and we've discussed making changes in diet and so on, is the fact that many times they're not really sure how to make the food taste good. Like, what if I change it? I wouldn't know how to cook the beans, or I wouldn't know how to, make those veggies tasty without cheese. I mean, how do you do that? So anyway, I thought we'd spend a little bit of our live stream today talking about that, and then we'll also address some questions that have come in. I want you to hang on just a minute. I'm going to pause and double check on one of my settings here. Okay, so what do we do for seasonings? Well, it reminds me of a time I went to visit one of my good friends, and we were talking about healthy eating and the kinds of things you could do and make, and I was cooking at her house, so I opened up her cupboard because I was going to show her some things she could do with the pot of food that was on the stove. And when I opened her cupboard, I was kind of surprised because all I found in her cupboard, well, that's quite a noisy vehicle going by. What I found in her cupboard was a salt shaker, some black pepper, and maybe one more thing. Maybe some onion salt, I'm not sure. But anyway, when I saw that, I was like, oh, well, it's really hard to make your food taste good without some basic backup herbs or seasonings. So before I forget, I wanted to let you know that on my website live stream page, I have loaded up for you a page that you can take with you to the supermarket, or you can take into your kitchen and do just check marks, having what I consider must-have herbs and seasonings if you want to make your food taste great, as well as a list of really nice to have, because I would use them a lot, sorts of seasonings. So you can jump over to my website at 3D Health for Life. It's the number 3, health for life.com. And if you go to the live stream for plant-based RNs, and just click on that on the home page, it'll take you to a page where I have all of the freebies, handouts, and notes that I upload for each of my live streams. There is a password required because it's not accessible to people that are not in my group, at least not for a while. And the password is capital G-O green. Go green! Exclamation mark. The 2 G's are capital, nothing else is. Go green! Exclamation mark. And that will give you the password to get onto the page on my website that has this handout for you. So it's easy for you to download or print out, or just download onto your phone, take with you to the store, whatever you want. But we're going to talk about some of those basic seasonings that are mentioned on that handout. When it comes to seasonings, I really don't know what I would do without onions and garlic and tomatoes. It just seems like they make so many dishes taste better. I like to use my onions either fresh or dry. If they're fresh, they can be white or red. A lot of times if I'm doing a curry or a stir fry, red onions are really nice. And of course, they've got that extra color, which means that they have more phytochemicals. Besides onions and garlic and tomatoes I didn't put on the list because they're not technically an herb or a seasoning. They're just a common ingredient in a lot of my foods. Besides that, I like some of the herbs that are sweet. We call them sweet herbs, things like basil, thyme, oregano. All of these have a lot of health producing benefits as well as giving great flavor to food. A lot of times, using these appropriately means you have to have some idea of what kinds of things work well together. So let me give you an example. If I'm going to make a tomato sauce, maybe it's a tomato sauce that I'm going to use with spaghetti or lasagna or on a pizza, or even as a dip for breadsticks. All of those tomato sauces have some of the same basic seasonings. Tomato blends really well with onion, garlic, and if you want the Italian flavor, you'll want to add basil and oregano. Those are kind of mainstays of the Italian flavor profile that most people are looking for. It can also have smaller amounts of some other herbs, but those are really the basic ones. And just to make it simple, I recommend that everyone have a good, just standard Italian seasoning mix on their shelf. That means you don't have to worry about, well, how much basil and how much oregano and how much of these other herbs do I need to put in? You can just toss in a good sized sprinkle of the Italian seasoning blend, and the blend is all made for you. I do want to talk a little bit though about quality, because all seasonings, all herbs, all spices are not created equal. You know, we live in the United States in a fairly temperate climate, and so not all spices and herbs can grow here in the United States. In fact, many of our favorites are grown overseas in more tropical climates. For example, cinnamons come from Southeast Asia, like Vietnam. We have other spices that come from parts of Africa or the island of Zanzibar or Mexico. Just different things come from different places. Because of that, if you walk into the spice aisle or the herb aisle at your supermarket, you're going to see probably 2 or 3 main brands of spices, maybe McCormick, maybe a generic one that belongs to your supermarket, or you might see another spice family or company. Now, all of those spices get processed through major spice merchants. Most of them are based out of New York City. And what you find on your grocery shelf is what is classed as a C-level spice or herb. Like if you're getting just a basil or a cardamom or a coriander, they're going to be C-level spices because that's what fits the price range for most supermarkets. But the flavor from your herbs and your spices actually you get from the essential oils in those herbs and spices. And the higher the level of essential oils, the stronger the flavor and also the more flavorful. It actually has many more flavor notes when it's fresh than after it's sat for a while, or when it's high quality versus low quality. So for that reason, I want to tell you where I like to source my herbs and spices. And I don't get any commission for this, and I don't get any kickbacks or anything like this, but I just want you to know where I like to source my herbs and spices because I know it makes a big difference in how my food tastes. I've had people even take my recipes, make something exactly like the recipe, and then they'll come back to me and they'll say, how come mine doesn't taste like yours? And when I started asking them questions, the only difference was where they were getting their herbs and their spices. So the place that I like to go to get mine is an online company called Penzies.com. That's P as in Peter, E, N as in Noah, Z as in zebra, E as in elephant, Y as in you, S.com. Now, Penzies.com is, I believe, based in, I think it's Minnesota, but they do have storefronts scattered all over the United States. But if you are not in a large metropolitan area, it's not likely that there's one in your town, because most of the places where they are places like Grand Rapids, San Francisco, Chicago, those sorts of things. And if you are fortunate enough to have one of those in your town, then I recommend you just go straight down to the store and get yours there. But if you live anywhere else in the country, I have found that buying online through them, and you can either phone them or go online, they will send out a catalog to you on a regular basis. This catalog is full of very fascinating information about where they get their herbs, where they get their spices, sometimes what the processing is that it's involved, and they also have a lot of their own recipes in there. Now, there's a caveat that I have to put in here, which is that their recipes generally are not particularly healthy, although they may be tasty. I have in the past taken some of those and altered them, adapted them, and substituted more healthy ingredients for some of their recipes and come up with some really great dishes. But I do really recommend that you try them out. I also found that the price, especially if you buy in bulk, is fairly comparable to what you're going to get in the grocery store. You can buy small quarter cup plastic bottles with shaker tops for most of the kinds of herbs and spices, and they carry a really wide variety. A lot of times I can find things there that I cannot find in the supermarket. One other thing I want to say about herbs and spices is that it's very important how you store them. Because the essential oils are the part that really give them flavor, it's important to store them in a dark place and a place that stays relatively cool. Many people store their spices either in the open right next to their stove or maybe in the cupboard right over their stove. Those are probably the worst places you can put them because heat and light will degrade your spices, and it won't take long till they have less flavor. If you're putting out good money for good quality spices and herbs, you want to keep them in good shape so that they will really give you a bang for your buck. So I always keep mine in a closed cupboard away from any heat sources. In the kitchen, that means away from the stove and away from the refrigerator. Often your refrigerator has quite a bit of hot air that circulates up from the back of it, so I don't keep them in a cupboard that's close to the refrigerator either. I don't recommend freezing most herbs and spices. Some herbs and spices are a little too fragile for that and don't keep well, although there are some that would do okay. I'm not going to give you a list of those today because pretty much if you keep them in the dark and away from heat, they will do quite well. But even then, their lifetime is limited. For example, if you have ground spices, that means they're in a fine powder, they don't last as long as whole herbs and spices. So if you have a fine powder, like say rosemary powder or a coriander powder or a cumin powder, you probably will want to replace those at least every year. So when you buy those spices, don't buy more of the ground spice than you're likely to use in a year. So if you're just starting out and experimenting with some of these different flavors, what you might want to do is just buy the very small bottles, the quarter cup, and then as you figure out which ones you're going to use more of, the next time then you can make an estimate of how much you could get. That might be a year's supply. If they are not ground, they are whole herbs or spices, then you will find that those last longer. They may last as long as 2 years unground, as long as you're keeping them cool and in the dark. So that gives you a little bit of a reference point. Sometimes I buy the whole spices and then just use a little coffee grinder to grind them shortly before I use them. But that's a little bit of extra trouble. So if I know I'm going to be using the ground form of a spice on a regular basis, I usually just buy it that way. One of the things that I really enjoy getting my herbs and spices from Penzies.com is that you will notice a huge difference when you open up their package. Just take a sniff of that package. You'll realize that you've never smelled anything that aromatic when you open up a jar from the grocery store. It's just not the same. And that difference becomes very important if you want to make some of your own basic herb blends. One of the things that I found that saves me time and money in the kitchen is making my own herb blends. For example, I have a standard blend that is used for any place where I just kind of need a nice seasoned vegetable salt sort of flavor. Like I might put that in a dip or sprinkle it on fresh vegetables or put it on my salad. I throw it into a lot of other dishes, and I call that my seasoned salt. And I have another one that's a real standard, which is my vegetarian chicken style seasoning. Now, both of these I save a lot of money on, as well as getting kind of top quality flavor by making my own blends. And it's really very easy to do that. All you have to do is take the ingredients that go into the blend, put it into your blender, which of course, I think as we've talked about, is one of your basic pieces of kitchen equipment. It doesn't have to be an expensive blender, but just a blender. It's very hard to cook plant-based with no blender. So if you happen to be living off the grid and you go to Lehman's Hardware catalog, they actually have a blender that is a hand crank blender. So you can get a non-electric blender if you want. But a blender of some sort is kind of important if you're going to be going to a plant-based diet. Anyway, so I just put all the ingredients in my blender, turn the blender on medium, and just blend long enough to mix everything up well and make it all the same size. Now, the reason I say all the same size is that a lot of herb blends may have something like a powdered herb, maybe powdered or rubbed sage, which is very fine, but they may also have something like basil, which is kind of a leaf, and it's like little leaf fragments, or you might have dry parsley, which are kind of bigger pieces of dried parsley. If you don't blend your herbs for your herb blend, what you'll find is that as you take the jar on and off the shelf, you shake it over your dishes, the bigger pieces will go to the top and the flavor won't stay mixed well. So what you pour out of your jar when it's full is going to taste different than what you're pouring out of your jar near the end. So blending your herbs together is a really important part of having a good herb blend that is handy to use in your kitchen. After this live stream is over, I'm going to be posting my own recipe for the vegetarian chicken style seasoning. So you'll want to go to my website to find that. I will put a link here in the Plant-Based RNs Plus group so that you can find it easily. But you will be able to go there and get my own recipe for the chicken style seasoning. Now, this chicken style seasoning is really amazing. I have had so many people tell me how much they like it. It's really versatile. For example, I can just take a pot of water, put some onion, some nutritional yeast flakes, and my chicken style seasoning, add noodles, and have chicken noodle soup. It's that good. I also use it for anything that might be improved by a chicken knee flavor. Sometimes I want to do like a tofu scramble, and I'd like to do that for a breakfast dish. I use my chicken style seasoning in that. Or I will also use it sometimes even in like a potato salad. I'll use a little bit of the chicken style seasoning, maybe more of the vegetable seasoned salt. But some other places that I like to use that chicken style seasoning are in stir fries. All kinds of stir fries. And this chicken style seasoning just has such a nice blend of flavors for that sort of a thing, which is kind of a mixed vegetable stir fry that might have cabbage and carrots and celery and onions and that sort of thing in it. I'll also use it for some of my broiled tofu recipes where I roast tofu with the chicken style seasoning and maybe just a little bit of roasted sesame seed oil. And just those two things can make a wonderful sandwich filling, kind of slabs of tofu that you can put with brown rice. You can put with mayo, tomatoes, and lettuce and make a nice sandwich filling. Or if some of you have been following my Instagram feed, Plant-Based Move, you will see that this last week I also posted some roll-ups. I did some lettuce roll-ups that had a tofu filling. And this tofu filling is kind of like a chicken salad style sort of filling. And it had tofu and olives and celery and chicken style seasoning, of course. And I actually took it to graduation for my nurse aid class this last week and passed it around to a bunch of my students who were really very skeptical about tofu. And some of them had even told me, no, I've tried tofu. It's horrible. I'm never going to try it again. Well, I just gave them some of this kind of chicken salad on crackers and just said, here, try this and tell me how you like it. And I was amazed at how many of them said, wow, that's really good. What is it? And when I told them it was tofu, you should have seen their eyes pop. They were really surprised. And some of them went, oh, well, we really like that. Could you please give us your recipe for it? So I'm actually going to be putting together the recipe for it, and that'll probably go on my website as well. So I'll post something here in the group when I have that up. But you can already go to Instagram and get a picture of it. The way I used it on Instagram was I took some large lettuce leaves and then laid avocado, tomatoes, microgreens, and several scoops of the chicken salad and just rolled it up and ate it that way. My husband and I really like it fixed, done as a roll-up in seaweed as well. That's a really fun way to eat seaweed. And I haven't always been much of a seaweed fan, but I found that there are some things that I enjoy the seaweed with, and that's one of them now. So that's kind of a starter on talking about seasonings. Now, I think what I'll throw in is a couple more seasoning mixes, just some ideas of things that blend together. For example, if you're going to be doing whole beans are really good, very simply seasoned with garlic and salt to taste. And you can use garlic powder or fresh garlic, either one. And just use about 1 teaspoon of salt per cup of dry beans, and then about a half a teaspoon of garlic, 1/4 to a half a teaspoon of garlic, granulated dry garlic per cup of dry beans. And you'll have a really nice flavor. And that's great with garbanzos and black beans and pinto beans and black-eyed peas and lentils of all different colors. And so that's a really, really easy, basic one. With the addition of nutritional yeast and some chicken style seasoning, I also like my garbanzos seasoned that way. So there's some ideas on making your beans taste good. And if you have some questions, go ahead and put them in the little chat box. I will check now and see if we have any questions. Those of you that have been watching, I just really appreciate you being with me today, and I would like to open it up for a little question and answer if anyone has questions. So let me take a look and see if I think I can see the chat box from here. And I am going to see if anybody has something to say. So hi Minerva, it's good to see you. I'm glad you're on. And I'm so glad to see my mom on here, Arna. Thank you for joining us today. And I see that you like the idea of making your own vegan chicken style seasoning because your store-bought has some added chemicals that you question. That's a really great point. Most of the vegetarian chicken style seasonings that I've seen out there, many of them have MSG, or they have sugar added, or they have other things that I just rather avoid. And I can do that by making my own. Minerva is asking if there's a good replacement for tofu. Another bean maybe that you know of. Well, let me ask you another question first, Minerva. Were you asking about that because you're avoiding soy? I know a lot of people are on soy-free diets right now, and so I wanted to know if that was the reason you're avoiding tofu. So just go ahead and stick that in the chat box, and I'll take a look at that. I use tofu kind of in the same food category as I use beans. So, okay, thanks. I see that, Minerva. Thank you. instead of thinking in terms of a replacement for tofu, I would probably just look at incorporating beans in different ways into my diet. Now, in terms of like this chicken salad that we were talking about that was made with tofu, there are some things where you can use lightly steamed cauliflower, just chop it up small, mix it with a lot of the same seasonings that you would tofu, and you can make some nice salads that way. I haven't actually tried the chicken salad that way, but I think it would work really well. So I'd love for you to experiment with that and let me know what you think and how it turns out. It also gives me an idea for looking at some other ways that we can use that. If I do slab tofu, that one's going to be a little bit more difficult to find like a tofu replacement, but there's some other excellent things that we can do with beans in terms of making like burgers or other kinds of sandwich fillings. So thanks for that question. I really appreciate it. I also want to mention another question that's been raised, but I think we're kind of running out of time today, so I'm not going to talk about it in detail today. But the question has been raised. If we're moving to a vegan diet, how do we know we're getting a balanced diet? Like, are there some principles of meal planning that can help me to make sure I'm getting all the nutrition that I need when I move to a plant-based diet? That's a really excellent question. Rachel sent me that question earlier in the week, and I just want to give her a little shout out here that I haven't forgotten about it, and we will have another live stream where we talk about how to plan well-balanced plant-based meals. So anybody have any other questions before I say goodbye here? I just want to double check and see if there was anything else. Don't forget to go to my website, 3D Health for Life. Go down on the home page and click on live stream for Plant-Based RNs Plus. It'll take you to a password protected page. Type in the password Go Green! Both G's are capitalized, and then hit submit. And that will give you access to a page with links to all of the freebies that I have offered on every single live stream, as well as the one for today, which is a list of basic seasonings that you want to make sure you have on hand. That will make it easy for you to follow a lot of plant-based recipes. Oh, Susan has one more question. Thank you for being on, Susan. It's great to see you today. Hope you're enjoying your Labor Day holiday. Do you have a recipe for herb de Provence? Oh, that's a really nice herb mix. And I think I do have one for that. I don't have it with me right now for the live stream, but I will make a note about that, and maybe that's something that we can share on an upcoming live stream. Well, I just want to say it's been great to have all of you on. Have a great day. Enjoy your holiday. Take some time to relax and spend time with family, and we'll see you next week. I might keep the live streams at the same time next week as it is this week. I've been kind of experimenting to see what are better times for people, and this seems to be a little better than Sunday evening. So I'll probably plan to do it again at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time next week. Thanks, and have a great day.